Greetings, traveler. Designing a video game world can seem endless. You have to make NPCs, locations, events, and you have to make so many of them. The list can be literally endless. In my experience, using Dungeons and Dragons to help with this process makes it so easy, it's almost criminal. Today, I want to share 4 ways that I've been using D&D to make designing a vast video game world extremely easy. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Xanthos. I've been working in the video games industry for the past 13 years or so. I've worked on FIFA, Rage of Bahamut, Star Ocean, and other games. So if you are someone who walks the path of making games, this one is for you. So let's take a look at 4 different ways how Dungeons and Dragons can help us create a vast video game world. Now, before we begin, what do you need exactly for a video game world? In my view, there's 4 elements that really set the tone and the theme for the world you're going to create. So first of all, of course, is the theme. So is it a space world or a Western world or a samurai world or whatever? You have to define the general theme of the world. Then you have to define some locations, some major areas of interests where your adventure or game is going to be taking place. Of course, you need the players and the NPC characters, so who they are, what they do, what they look like, and so on. And finally, you need some events and some world history to make your world believable and to give the time dimension to the world so it doesn't feel like a single instant in time. So let's take a look at the first way Dungeons and Dragons helps us create all this vast body of knowledge. Well, when you sit down to be a dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons, you need to come up with a theme anyway for your world. And it doesn't matter if you go with a published adventure or with an existing campaign setting, you decide which slice of that you want your adventure to cover. If you don't want to go with a generic published setting and you want to create something of your own, then likely you are inspired by something. For example, I have here a couple of things that inspired me to make campaigns in the past. Maybe something like a samurai book is good to draw inspiration from and to think about what the adventure would feel in a very pure, very specific rules kind of world. It could be something else. It could be maybe you like a certain manga or anime that caught your attention, you like the world, you like the characters, and you think, this would make an interesting setting to explore with my players and see things that the book or the movie or whatever didn't explore to my satisfaction, and this is our opportunity to explore it to our heart's content. Maybe there is something that you watched recently, a movie in the cinema that really caught your attention and you want to give your players more of that. So maybe you saw something that had a lot of details, a lot of theme, and you still wanted to explore more of it. The Mad Max world is very interesting. It has lots of details, lots of space still to be explored. So again, it doesn't matter how the original content tackled all these contents. This is your opportunity to customize it and make it your own and take it far beyond perhaps even the original creator's idea. So when you do all that for your video game, for your D&D game, you're actually doing the same process for the video game itself. You still have to decide the same things. You still have to decide a theme and so on. And you might think, okay, if I have to do the same work anyway, why would I bother doing it in D&D? Well, because as we mentioned before as well, in Dungeons and Dragons, you have resources to help you do just that. And even having a simple example of how to create a sample world. By the way, this was a page from the Dungeon Master's Guide from Dungeons and Dragons. Don't worry too much about the edition. In fact, don't worry about having resources specifically from Dungeons and Dragons. There's many other tabletop RPG games that will offer you the same guidelines for making a world. D&D is just my recommendation for it because it has a lot of advice about how to customize the content to fill your needs, while I think other worlds focus more on what they have to offer than say how to generalize it. So you have resources like that in D&D that help you with the customization process specifically for the world and give you a lot of different examples about fire world and ice world and an elf world and so on. So you have some examples to take off the shelf and customize on your own. So this is the first way D&D helps and gets you started. After that, what you will do likely is set some basic locations for your adventures. So when you meet with your players, you will design an adventure for Dungeons & Dragons, assuming you will be the DM, to explore some dungeon or perhaps some city for your players to visit and so on. So as you're designing this city or this encounter, you will likely use maps, location descriptions, images, things of interest around these areas, reasons why these areas are explore worthy and of interest to your players. So all that stuff is extremely useful when thinking about the video game. We'll talk about it later on as well, but all this material is definitely going to come in handy. So it's something you naturally do throughout a D&D session, so it would be a shame to use it just for that. Moving on to the third way, you will also ask your players for your D&D session to make characters. And when they make characters, they will make it using their own imagination and what they have in mind for their characters. So this is key here because, of course, you could sit down and think of a bunch of characters, or at this day and age, you could ask ChatGPT or some other AI to create an endless list of characters. But there's two problems with that, right? If you are the one who is creating the characters, then all of them are coming from your own mind, from your own experiences and what you know and what you like and so on. And this is great. You will definitely use this for the non-playable characters. But it's important to have the opportunity of getting the input of the players on their own characters, specifically because your players are not you, and they think about their character from their perspective, and they also interpret the world that you make. So after they hear a general description about your world and what the adventure or the campaign is going to be about, they will then think, how would my character fit into this world? And this will give you a lot of details and help you flesh out the people that eventually will inhabit your video game at the step of the D&D adventure. So to look at a couple of examples, for example, when your players fill in their character sheet, it will inevitably have some skills, some weapons they use, some things they carry, and so on. The specifics here are not important. The important part is that every single one of these examples has a grouping of details, so to speak. So this person used these skills and this gear together because they wanted to achieve whatever their personal character goal is. That angle is extremely cool, I think, and extremely useful when wanting to create an original character that's different from basically everything else in the world. So the character sheet is one thing. The other thing is something as simple as the character model. So we have here a character model from Kingdom Death, and one of my players used it before to express a monk character. Now, of course, there is the archetype of the monk where you say, it's a martial artist, he's a minimalist, he doesn't care about possessions or material things or the world and so on. He just wants to achieve enlightenment and so on. And that is a good start, I think. But looking at the figurine or looking at the player description that player has added to his character sheet, you can see many more details, right? So this guy here, he has kind of long hair and a kind of a bald spot at the top of his head, which is an interesting detail. Also, many monks use staffs, so long wooden clubs. This specific image of it, I don't know if you can see it well, gives you more details about this particular character's weapon. And also we said that monks are minimalistic in general and so on. Well, the way this guy is wearing his, I guess, loincloth you would call it, or maybe waistcloth or something, gives you a very specific description of how that looks like specifically. And also if you see he's carrying a little lantern here, so that also gives you a hint about what his daily life is or what sort of adventure he's preparing for, and so on. So excellent examples where somebody else's ideas and character can enrich your world, D&D or video game, without you having to come up with originality at every single turn of the creation process. And finally, as I mentioned before, the fourth way where D&D helps is with the history of the world and the events. So you don't want to have a world where you have the current state of what everything looks like, what every country is doing and what every continent looks like and so on as a single slice of time. You want to present, if possible, this spectrum of the history of the world. So what happened way back, what's happening nowadays, and if you want, you can even include the future. So the world is heading in this direction or that direction in the future. And right now, these powers that be are in the preparation stage for that. So when you're actually playing the adventure with your party will likely be attracted to certain events that you put in the game to attract their attention. So maybe there is a war going on, maybe there was a huge shipwreck somewhere and looters are rushing to the spot to get as much as they can, and your players have to defend it, or they're part of the looters, or they're looking for something particular. Or let's say a meteor fell down to your world and it's causing all sorts of trouble, or it's an opportunity for new materials and so on. All these things that you will naturally add to your D&D campaign to attract the interest of your players are things that you can and should include in the video game, if not explicitly, at least as references and as events of the past that have helped shape your world, no matter how big or small. So that's the first part where these events and the history gets expanded in D&D. The second part is after you introduce this event and you say what happened and you say what the general world's reaction is to that event, then you have your players react to that. Either they're interested, or they want to explore it, or they feel negative towards it and they want to take some action to make the world forget it, or erase it from everybody's memories, or I don't know. There's an infinite amount of ways where your players can surprise you. And again, you might say, well, can't I just like generate all that with ChatGPT? Yes, you could, but there is a tendency in generated content like that to be a little bit too random and a little bit too generic. I know that you can set rules and say, make it so and so, make sure you don't repeat yourself or you don't cover the same topics and so on, but it's just the nature of the generation process. Is it useful? Absolutely. Can you leave 100% of the task to it? My recommendation is to not do that, because the results tend to be kind of repeatable and a little bit too random in my experience. Doing it this way, where you introduce an event that's first of all interesting to you, and then to the world, and then getting the player's reaction, and then continuing this cycle with new events introduced into the world, then the players reacting with their own actions, and that itself becomes the basis for the next event, next big event in the world, and then the world reacts, and then the player reacts, and so on, can set off an endless chain reaction of action and reaction in your world that will basically generate the entire history or the entire timeline of the world all by itself. All you need to do is arrange it and edit it to suit your particular need. And then you will basically have everything you need. So there you go. These are the 4 ways we can create, and I have created theme, locations, NPCs, and history for the world of a game. It happens very naturally in the process of Dungeons & Dragons, and you can take all your notes, all the recorded content from your game sessions, if you happen to record them, the character sheets of the players, the maps that you created, the locations, the NPCs, the timeline, all of that can happen. It doesn't have to happen at once. It can happen over 3, 4, 5 sessions and so on. And it completely removes the pressure you have when you create a video game world. You don't have to sit down and in one day create 100 NPCs and 100 locations and 100 events and so on. It's much more organic, and you don't even have to do it by yourself. You have the players there to help you, even though they don't know they're helping and they're just having fun instead. So this is the way I've been using to generate worlds for my video games, the ones I've worked on. And this is the method that I also use to create the world for my current video game. It's a post-apocalyptic airship-based world. It's inspired by things like Mad Max and Waterworld and this kind of very bleak but also full of heroism and achievement kind of world. I had to customize the world, the magic items, the classes, the game system itself, the way combat works, how you do combat with airships and so on. So if that's something that's interesting to you and you would like to see how I applied this method to create a very specific campaign setting and how this gave rise to the world for the video game I'm working on right now, please let me know down below, and I'll make sure to answer these questions in the next videos. So thank you for your time. If you know someone who is interested in these things and is perhaps working on a video game and struggling to create all these things you need for a video game world, please share it with them. And as always, have fun.